Boys and girls, welcome to school. Today we're going to look at how planes fly.
Runway 22 left, clear to land, wind 24.
Planes fly by having the wings divert a certain amount of air, a certain mass of air downwards. Pushing that mass of air downwards, as long as that mass of air is equal to the weight of the airplane, shoving the air downwards will support the weight of the airplane upwards, therefore flying. No. There's more to it than that. Flying is a balance of four forces. We have weight, lift, thrust, and drag. First, we're going to look at two forces that try to keep the plane from flying, try to keep the plane on the ground, and that would be weight and drag. We'll start with a simple one, weight. Weight, you already know what the weight of the airplane is. It's the mass of the airplane times gravity. It's how heavy the plane is, plus passengers, cargo, etc., etc. That's how heavy the plane is. That's the weight. Weight, the gravity's pulling it down, so it tries to keep the plane down on the ground. So there you go. That's weight. Drag. Drag is the resistance to the motion through the air. That's friction with the air. The plane is trying to move through the air. There's a certain friction. The air is rubbing up against it. There's several things that affect drag. Drag is the sum of all the friction, all the resistance to motion that the air is providing against the airplane. It's affected by several things. One is the shape of the airplane. You can have a very sleek aerodynamic jet fighter, or you can have a brick. You can have a flying box. The shape of the airplane will affect how much friction the air is causing and creating against the airplane. There's that drag is also affected by speed, how fast the plane is flying, how slow. The faster you go, the higher that friction becomes. Therefore, the faster you go, the higher drag. It's also affected by the density of the air, meaning the higher you go, the thinner the atmosphere, the less dense the air is, you have less drag. So it's more efficient to fly up higher and higher altitudes. The lower you go, the more dense the air, the higher the friction, the higher the drag becomes. So you have friction trying to slow the plane down. You have weight trying to bring the plane down. And those two forces try to keep the plane or working against the airplane flying. Now, to counteract those two forces, you need to input some energy into this flying system. You have to counteract drag, and you do that by the force that we call thrust. Thrust directly opposes drag, and is the force. This is the means that you input energy into the airplane, into this system, to make the plane fly. You need thrust to counteract drag. Thrust is created by the engines. The engines grab a mass of air and shove it backwards, throw the air backwards, therefore resulting in forward motion of the airplane. In this case, the propellers grab a chunk of air and accelerate it and throw it backwards, and grab another chunk of air and move it backwards, much like you would do if you were in a kayak or a canoe. You were paddling. With a paddle, you grab a hunk of water and you push it back. You grab another hunk of water and push it back, resulting in the canoe moving forward. That's exactly what the propellers are doing, grabbing a chunk of air and moving it and shoving it backwards. Repeatedly, time and time again, which results in a thrust force pushing the plane forward. Thrust, and that's exactly what all aircraft and rocket engines are doing, is grabbing a mass of air and shoving it back. Be it propellers, being a jet engine, or even a rocket engine, all they're doing is accelerating a mass of air and shoving it back, producing a resultant force, which is thrust, in the forward direction to counteract drag. As long as you're producing thrust, the plane will keep moving forward. You add more thrust, you can go faster until the two forces balance out. If you reduce the thrust, then the drag overpowers it and the plane slows down. If you add thrust, the thrust overpowers the drag and the plane will go faster. Now weight. Weight is counteracted by lift. Lift, like I said in the beginning of the video, is created by the wings pushing a certain mass of air downwards. As long as the plane is moving forward, the wings will divert a mass of air downwards. That mass of air being shoved downwards has to equal the weight of the airplane for the airplane to remain at a constant altitude. If the wings are pushing more air down than the weight of the airplane, then the plane will climb. If the wings are pushing a mass of air that is lower than the weight of the airplane, the plane will come down. A straight, level, unaccelerated, or constant speed flight means that all four forces are in balance. Drag equals thrust, therefore the plane will maintain a constant speed, and lift equals the weight of the airplane, which means that the plane will neither climb or descend. Any reduction in any of the forces will result in movement in that direction. If you increase thrust, the plane will accelerate. If you decrease thrust, the plane will slow down. If, for example, as the plane is flying and is burning fuel, it will become lighter, so the weight will decrease. So with the same amount of lift, the plane wouldn't have a tendency of climbing. And not ideally, as the plane flies, it is getting lighter. So as the plane is flying, it starts becoming more efficient because it now has to produce less lift. As the plane gets lighter, it has to produce less lift, and therefore drag reduces. And if you maintain the same amount of thrust, now it means that with the same energy, you're flying faster and higher. Or even if you keep the same altitude, you're still flying faster for the same amount of thrust, becoming more efficient. Now, thrust is produced by engines. If you add more engines, it doesn't necessarily mean that you have a faster flying airplane, because the engines will produce thrust up to a certain speed. The engines are capable of throwing air backwards up to a maximum designed speed. They will not go any faster than that. So if you grab an airplane with 2 engines and you add 2 more engines, and now it became a 4-engined airplane, doesn't mean that the top speed of the airplane isn't going to be any faster. It just means that it can carry more weight. Well, that's about it. Flying is, as you hear going by now, is a noisy experience. But basically flying is a balance of these 4 forces: weight, lift, drag, and thrust. Thrust is provided by the engines, and it counteracts drag. Drag is the friction of the air rubbing up against the shape of the airplane. Weight is, the weight of the airplane, and lift is the mass of air that the wings accelerate downwards. That is the lift, and that mass of air being shoved down has to equal the weight of the plane for the air to sustain the weight of the airplane flying. That's it. I hope that made sense. I hope it helps you guys, and have a good day. See ya.